And there you go.
Ooh, we went full screen there. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the January meeting of Central Park United Neighbors. Let me be surely the last to wish you a happy new year. I hope everyone's 2022 is off to a good start. Next slide, please, Brian. CPUN is a registered neighborhood organization for the Central Park community in Denver and now in Aurora as well. We are here to facilitate dialogue and create awareness around opportunities to engage on topics of importance to this community. We help people to find their way into a process so that resident questions, concerns, and ideas for a better community can be addressed in a constructive and inclusive way. We promote public service, civil civic discourse, and collective efficacy. And at monthly meetings like this one, and through the work of our 6 working committees, CPUN facilitates the discussion of key issues with neighbors, engages in proactive problem avoidance and amicable problem solving. CPUN is committed to providing an inclusive and welcoming environment for all members of our community. We are a volunteer board of your neighbors and a registered 501c3. Our meeting, as always, will have 2 parts. In the first hour, our outreach meeting, we will have a brief check-in with our CPUN committees, various updates from our community partners. A special guest with us this evening is Grace Rink, who's the Executive Director of the Office of Climate Action, Sustainability, and Resiliency. She's here to discuss the possibility of a new fee for residential trash services. Looking forward to that, and also hoping to learn a little bit more about the work of that office. We'll then conclude with 5 minutes of public comment. We'll then move on to our board meeting, which will begin with committee reports. We will review the updated bylaws, which, if you follow CPUN closely, know were updated in 3 key areas at the December meeting, and we will formalize them in our bylaws tonight, as well as elect a former president to our officer committee. I have an update on the Park Creek, Westerly Creek Metropolitan District dispute that I'll discuss, pertinent that relates to the SCD board and the process that they're potentially going to undertake to identify prospective candidates for the Park Creek Metropolitan District. We'll have outreach for open board seats discussion, a treasurer's report from Brian, our treasurer. And then we have another special guest with us, Travis Leiker, who's the president and executive director of Capitol Hill United Neighbors, who's going to join us for the last half hour of the meeting to discuss the work that he's leading as part of the Unhoused Action Coalition. So looking forward to that conversation as well. Next slide, please, Brian. I'm excited to share one more, there you go, that we're getting a protected bike lane in Central Park. It will run the length of Central Park between 36th and Montview. It's under construction now, and they expect to complete it in a few weeks. I don't know if Brad's here with any more specific update than that, but I know it's going to be at least a couple more weeks. Exciting for this board and for the community is that a number of years ago, actually, we had a contest to design a unique logo for this bike lane. I remember sitting in a coffee shop with Carol and Rick Luthold kind of planning this a number of years ago, and it's finally coming to fruition. So like the Rhino, we will have a cycling dog on our protected bike lane on Central Park Boulevard. So looking forward to seeing that project come to fruition, and thank Brad Rivera, who's done a lot to make sure that that project got across the finish line. Next slide, please. All of CPUN's committees meet on a monthly basis to organize a number of different initiatives, and I'll just make an open call quickly to any committees that have opportunities for engagement that they'd like to share with the committee. This is different from a committee report. It's specifically to share opportunities to participate in scheduled activities. Do any committees have something that they'd like to share?
Sure, I do.
Carol. Go ahead.
And Brad probably does too, but we'll see if when he comes into the meeting for the Safe Streets. But no, I just wanted to say something about the Education Committee that we're going to start gearing up in terms of support for our local schools. And we're starting out with elementary schools and want to include support for our secondary schools as well. And at least as far as the executive committee knows, that I've been working with Brian Weber, and I know that he's on the call. And so kick in if you want to, Brian, but the foundation is doing some great work, and he's going to have some exciting news by February around the website. Okay.
Is everybody okay?
Is anybody ill? I hope not. But at any rate, I've been working with Brian, and at our education committee meeting on the 11th, we talked at length about this and about what the foundation has in terms of support for schools. And we're talking about for students and staff and teachers and that sort of thing. So there will be more news about that. But we also talked about other things that the education committee can be involved in. And so I will be sharing that with folks. We want to have our two new school board members speak at one of our meetings this year, or two of our meetings this year, possibly Dr. Marrero as well. I was just attending the school board meeting that was held from 4:30 to 5:30 this afternoon, and there's a lot going on with DPS in terms of what they are spotlighting academically and socially for children, and emotionally for students. So there's a lot going on with the schools, which I'm sure you all know. But we did talk about other things that we can do with the education committee this year, and including adult education. So Brian, do you want to say anything or no?
Brian, you're unmuted.
You're not.
Brian, we can't hear you. Sorry. You might have been the monster voice.
He was the monster voice, so I mentioned him. So.
Oh.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what.
Brian, you might be having some technical issues there. At least I hope that's. I hope that's.
Sound like you're about to Hulk out.
Brian, we'll try to circle back with you shortly, but we're just having some audio issues there, it sounds like. Sorry about that, Brian. We'll give it another try before the end of the outreach hour. Yeah, thanks, Carol. Does any other committee have any other opportunities they want to spotlight? If not, we can move on to our community partners. Why don't we do that? And we'll start, as always, with Denver Police Department. Lieutenant Hines.
Yeah, good morning. Or see, I'm so used to saying morning, I just said it's clearly not morning. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So thanks for having us. For any of you who haven't met me yet, I'm Kevin Hines. I'm the Sector 1 Lieutenant in District 5. So I cover all of the Central Park neighborhood in District 5. Basically anything west of Peoria is the easiest way to describe my area. I'm also joined tonight on the meeting by Danae Ferenz, who's our Community Resource Officer, and partners with me on a lot of the stuff we're working on. So just to give you some updates on things that we're seeing right now. I know that street racing was a concern that a lot of people had asked me about, and I wanted to kind of speak to what we've been doing. Both Danae and I are involved with the street racing working group in the metro area, and we have a couple dozen agencies involved in this group because street racing is a problem across the entire region, not even just the metro area at this point. So we have done in the last year, I think we try to do a weekly operation. They're sometimes canceled because of weather and things of that nature when the street racers aren't gathering. But we had at least 43 operations we did in 2021. And typical operation, we could have anywhere from 5 to 20 or more DPD officers involved in the operation, plus partners from around the metro area. During 2021, we arrested a person by the name of Juan Flores, who was a leader of one of the Colorado takeover groups. Their thing is they like to take over intersections and do burnouts and race and things like that, similar to the behavior that we saw on 225 last year in Aurora that many of you may have seen on the news, where about 1,000 cars went out there and shut down 225 so that they could race on it. Another one of the group leaders, Anthony Corona, was actually killed in 2021. You probably won't be surprised to hear that he was hit by a car. So this other individual, Juan Flores, was kind of picking up where he left off. So he was arrested at one of the events earlier in 2021. From a community standpoint, I would like to recommend that anybody who's dealing with street racing issues and sees street racing issues logs on to reportstreetracing.com and fills out the form there to let us know what's happening. That form is addressed in real time when we're having issues going on. It's managed by Kayak, the Colorado Information Analysis Center, which coordinates our working group for the street racing. And when they get reports of street racing, they push it out to all of us who are in the working group so that we're aware of where it's happening and we can quickly pivot to where that activity is taking place and address it. So again, that's reportstreetracing.com. Anybody can go on there and get some information about the problem and report stuff if you're starting to see, cars gathering out in the warehouses off of Havana or on Central Park or anything like that. You make a report on there and let us know. If you don't have internet access, you can always call the non-emergency number and give that information to our dispatchers as well. Some of the things we've been doing to address this problem: we've had our traffic investigation unit detectives involved. Ordinarily, those detectives only handle serious bodily injury or fatal accidents, things of that nature. But we're bringing their expertise into this to try to deal with some of the issues we're dealing with that are specific to street racing. We've also had a number of our undercover teams, like our narcotics teams, working within these groups, infiltrating these groups so that we can get real-time information on them, since a lot of what they put out is on privatized social media groups and things of that nature. We actually have some individuals who are infiltrating their groups to get us the intel we need to address the problem. We've also been using our city's helicopter, so you may occasionally hear that around, and our Denver's citywide police impact team. So we've got a lot of resources addressing this. Just to give you some quick stats, we're only 18 days into the new year. So far, we've prevented at least 3 intersection takeovers just here in the Central Park neighborhood, where the groups were planning to take over intersections to do this kind of unlawful activity, and we've been able to stop it. We've issued more than 20 citations within the street racing group so far this year, and we've impounded at least 4 of their vehicles with street racing holds. So we're making some progress on it, but I just want to emphasize again, we can greatly use your help there. So if you guys are noticing stuff going on in the neighborhood, please report it to us so that we can get officers out there while there's still only 20 or 30 vehicles instead of having 1,000 of them gather without us knowing about it. Beyond the street racing, I'll just mention some other stuff that we're dealing with. We continue to struggle with auto thefts throughout the metro area. Colorado, unfortunately, is one of the hot spots in the country for auto theft right now. Just to give you an idea on the vehicles that are being most frequently stolen, the newest list from the Colorado Metro Auto Theft Task Force shows that Chevy Silverados are at the top of the list, followed by Hyundai Sonatas, Kia Optimas, Kia Sportages, and Ford F-250s. That's the top 5 most frequently stolen vehicles over the last 6 months. At previous meetings here, I've also talked about the catalytic converter theft issue we've been having. Those cases are still happening. I don't think they're happening with quite the frequency that they were in about the middle of 2021. We are continuing to work with our partners where we can to offer more events where we can get catalytic converters engraved with VIN numbers and painted for citizens. We don't have any events coming up anytime soon, just because we need to find availability from our community partners on that. However, we do have some catalytic converter engraving kits that we can check out to citizens if anybody is interested in trying to take that on at home, basically just engraving your VIN number onto your catalytic converter and then painting it with some heat resistant paint. And we think those kits will definitely benefit local businesses who have fleets and things like that, where they can get their fleet mechanic out there and mark all of their vehicles at once. The hope with this is that it'll both deter catalytic converters from being stolen and will also give us a means of tracking the catalytic converter if it is stolen and we recover it, which allows us to actually prosecute the crime rather than just going, maybe that was stolen. So that pretty much covers what I had to mention in the update here. I know Danae had a couple of things she was going to mention as well, if you're on there, Danae. And then we can take any questions from you guys as well, if you have anything for us.
Good evening, everybody. So I just got done putting all this information in the chat. So we do have a commanders meeting coming up. It is this Thursday, actually, on the 20th of January at 6 p.m. We're doing that via Microsoft Teams still. There is a call-in number and a link to join virtually. So I attached that, and if you have any questions, send me an email. My email is also in the chat. And as of right now, that is all we have coming up for this month. So we're happy to answer any questions from anybody.
Thank you, Officer Ferenz and Lieutenant Hines. Lieutenant Hines, just back to the street racing issue. I hear the progress that's being made, but it's hard to put that in context. Are there reportable metrics for success in this area that you can share? Did you hit them in 2021? What does the year ahead look like in that regard?
So I don't know that we can measure success quantitatively very easy on this. This is an issue that involves many rather informal groups and some formal groups that get together. And we've had cases, for example, where we'll shut down one group and then a new group forms under a different name a week later with one of the members running it on social media. That's the power of the information age is kind of running this right now. So as vague as this may sound, I think one of the metrics from which we're trying to measure success is how the community's feeling about it and whether or not we're starting to have some impact on it. One thing that I will say that we're seeing is that the groups are much smaller gatherings than what we were getting in early 2021. We had several occasions on just their Sunday meetups in 2021 where we had 1,000 vehicles or 800 vehicles or 500 vehicles gathering. So far, the largest gatherings we found in District 5 have been about 50 vehicles so far this year. So we're hoping that we're breaking up the very large gatherings by getting ahead of it. That's been one of our big goals, is to get the intel quickly enough that we can get to a position before they can really plant their feet there. And I think we have been successful in that regard. Just looking through our after action reports from the last few weeks, for example, we've been getting reports of 50 vehicles starting to gather, and we've got officers on it within a few minutes. And then they decide to bail out of Denver and they'll go to Aurora or Thornton, or just to give you an idea on the flow of this. Lately, we've seen that they tend to gather in Thornton first, then they'll move down to this area. And then when they get pressure here, they'll move on to Aurora or down to Castle Rock and things like that. So they bounce from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. But we've been putting a concentrated effort out here in District 5 to try to make sure that we don't allow the large gatherings to take place, because even with the speed with which they can organize these events, it still takes time to get 500 to 1,000 cars assembled. So by catching it early, we've been breaking the groups up on the streets before they can gather like that. In that way, I would say that we're successful. It's tough to measure success on this just by writing tickets. You could be writing the same person a ticket. You could be writing, 100 people a ticket one time. So it's hard, I think, to measure success from that as much as our ability to break up the large gatherings. And I think we're having some success there, but we don't want to let the pressure up, which is why I keep saying we want to keep getting the intel from you guys and anybody in the community that can give it to us so we can get on top of that as quick as possible.
Thanks, Lieutenant Hines. Do others have questions? If not, thank you both for joining us as always. Appreciate it. Do we have anyone from Councilman Herndon's office? Hi, Amanda. I see you.
Hi, thanks so much for having me as always. You know, I think the biggest thing that I just want to start off with is if anybody hasn't signed up for our newsletter, we send out via email a monthly newsletter that has a ton of different updates from city departments and community partners in it. And so I realize I haven't mentioned that in a while, and it's a sort of great way to get sort of the digest version of a lot of different announcements from city agencies. So if you haven't done that, feel free to, go through our website, send me an email. I'll make sure you get on it. Just let me know. A couple of things to keep an eye on, big picture things. You all have seen that your trash and recycling schedule has most likely changed. So hopefully that has gotten all sorted out. This week is a little different because of the holiday, but I know a ton of folks did have their routes adjusted. And if you have any trouble with it, call 311. If they somehow miss your day, just give them a call. They'll come back and pick it up. But on the whole, we've gotten pretty good feedback that has worked out just fine. Redistricting is still in the works. That is happening. So, stay tuned on that. If you haven't already gone through the city's website and submitted your feedback about communities of interest and where you think the boundaries should be for council districts for the upcoming elections, let us know. And then one other thing is Northeast Denver Leadership Week. You all hear us talk about this every single year. We're really proud of it. It's a leadership development program and career exploration program for high school students. It's totally free, and we are thrilled to be able to do it every year. Fingers crossed, we will be able to do it again in person this year. If you know a high school student who might be interested, send them our way. The application is live and it's northeastdenverleadershipweek.org. I will be around until the end of the meeting, so feel free to send me an email, a chat, or let me know if you have any questions.
Thanks, Amanda. Any questions for Amanda? If not, we will move on to Eric from Northeast Transportation Connections. Hi, Eric.
Hi. Sorry, I'm trying to start my video there. I think, here we go. Yeah, so updates from Northeast Transportation Connections. Our biggest one is that we're about a little less than a month away from the Winter Bike to Work Day. So that is Friday, February 11th this year. I'll post a link in the chat where you can pledge to ride. We're going to be at the Stanley Marketplace. That's where we usually hang out for Winter Bike to Work Day. We'll have a couple other partners there. I think the Sand Creek Regional Greenway Partnership is going to be there, as well as the Hart Family Cycling. We usually have some light breakfast items, some coffee. It's usually, years past, it's been really cold, so we're hoping that it's going to be milder weather, so it's more fun to hang out. But please do come by and see us if you can. Definitely pledge on the website to bike, and if you can bike kind of any day that week, it counts towards like the Winter Bike to Work Day. So we just like to have some fun around Bike to Work Day for the winter time as well. So just a fun challenge there. We've been doing these monthly campaigns for people to track their trip. So not just biking, but teleworking, taking the bus, carpooling, biking, walking, anything but driving alone. And if you track 8 trips a month, you get entered to win prizes. This month it's called New Commute, or New Year, New Commute. So I'll post that challenge as well. We do these monthly with our partners across the region. So again, just another fun way to really encourage people to change their commute and just look at their options. Those are the big things for us. I'm excited to see that the protected bike lane is going in. If you guys remember, NETC is also involved in holding that stencil kind of long-term for that protected bike lane. So kind of long-term maintenance will fall on NETC. So please let us know if you guys do see any of those stencils that need repair. Hopefully not this year. Hopefully they last quite a while, but make sure you do get a hold of us if that is the case. We're excited to be a part of that. And I think that's it. I'll post some things in the chat, but thanks for having us.
Thanks, Eric, and forgive me for neglecting to mention
Oh,
NETC's
no worries.
role in the bike lane.
No, yeah, it's been a while. I'm glad
Appreciate
it's
it,
finally
yeah.
going. Yeah, it's exciting.
Any questions for Eric? You said you'll post those links in the chat, right, Eric?
Yeah,
Great.
doing that now.
Any other questions? If not, we'll move on to Sam Gary Branch Library. I think I saw John here. Hi, John.
All right. Hello, everybody. Yeah, let's see. We've got some updates from Denver Public Library as a whole, as well as specifically Sam Gary. I guess the not so good news first, we had to pause all of our in-person programming due to Omicron. We're hopefully just, we'll see. I mean, we announced it through the end of January, so we'll kind of take it, we'll see what happens. But we were kind of just starting to really do things in person again. So we'll be ready to do that when it's safe. But for now, we're just doing virtual. But there are quite a few virtual programs at the library. I'll link a couple things in the chat. I think one of the coolest things we've got going right now is the Winter of Reading, which is it's similar to the summer reading program, but instead of it being for children, it's for adults. We've been doing it for a handful of years now. It's pretty fun. We get a decent amount of people taking part in it. I'll link to it. It's real simple. You come in the library, you get a little brochure that has some different activities that you can do. One of them is simply reading a book, but also things like checking different things out on the website, or maybe using a resource that, from the library you haven't used before. And so you do, I think it's five different things, fill that out, bring it back in, and we've got some really nice mugs, and we also have some really nice cloth tote bags. If you're like me, you probably have a lot of bags, reusable bags, but these are like really nice bags. So I'm definitely a big fan of them, but I'll put a link to that in the chat. There's also some fun virtual programs tied to that. One of which is a Battle of the Books on January 22nd, in which some people that were chosen, some authors get to kind of give their case for a book that they think is an essential read for people. And anyway, it's a pretty neat program. That's coming up in a couple of weeks. Let's see, a couple other things I wanted to mention there. The Denver Public Library is hiring. Unfortunately, we don't have any, well, I shouldn't say unfortunately. Fortunately, we don't have any open positions at Sam Gary right now. We've been lucky to not have anyone leave through COVID. But if you know anyone that's interested in working for the library, I think there are 12 jobs posted right now in various places in the city, including one at the soon to be opened Art Park Library in Rhino. There isn't a date set on that yet, but it's a cool shared space where there's some studio space, affordable studio space for artists, as well as what'll be kind of a small library space. It won't have a big collection, but it'll do a lot of programming. And so hopefully that'll be, hopefully this summer, I think late spring, early summer. We'll see, but we don't have a date yet. But so that's exciting. And then the only other thing, a couple more things. One is that at Sam Gary Library, we are currently looking for members of our Teen Advisory Board. So the Teen Advisory Board, they meet, right now I think it's bi-weekly for a couple hours. And they're basically they help kind of decide what the programming and what the teen space is like in the library, kind of getting buy-in from members of the community. So if you know anyone that has, I mean, I think most teenagers have a lot going on, are pretty busy, but if you know anyone that would want to get involved with the library, that's an option, and you can reach out to us for that. And then the only other thing I wanted to mention, there was an announcement today about KN95 masks being distributed throughout the state and to all public libraries. And I think Governor Polis was on CPR, and it's been being reported on the news media. We don't have any at this point. Denver Public Library doesn't have any. So we will hopefully be getting some. This kind of took us a little bit off guard, so we're hoping to find out more. We've already gotten some phone calls about it, and I think we're going to get more. But yeah, the announcement was kind of like every public library will have a supply of masks, so we're hoping to get them at some point, but we don't know much more about it than that at this point.
John, when you do know, you're welcome to send those details over to us, and we're happy to help get the word out and make sure people understand what they can get when. Okay, yeah, and there has been some updates on our social media. This all kind of happened in a hurry, so, and I'm sure we're going to get a lot of phone calls about it, and we'd love to. We just don't have anything yet, so that's kind of where we're at with that. So, okay, well, let us know how we can help. Sure, certainly. Thank you, Jeff. Yeah. Let's see. I think that's everything on my list for right now. Yeah, I think that's it. Right. Any questions for John? No? Well, thank you, John. Do we have any representatives from Mercy Housing here tonight? I don't see. I don't think so. Mercy Housing, just let me know if anyone from Mercy Housing is here. If not, we'll move on to the MCA. Jack, do you mind providing an MCA update? Jack was having computer problems. Oh, yeah, he might be gone.
No, I am here.
You're here. Excuse me.
It's been a fun day with the computer in my makeshift office. Yes. Hi, everyone. Wanted to, MCA we're kind of in our quiet season right now with the winter and the snow. We do like to remind folks when it does snow, you do need to shovel the snow on your sidewalk within 24 hours of the snowfall. That leaves our sidewalks clear and accessible to our neighbors with accessibility needs. During major storm events, the MCA will plow the alleys. We define a major storm event on our website. If you are looking for more information there, you can take a look at what meets the definition for a major storm event. Also, we do all the snow removal for our parks and parkways here in the neighborhood. So if you ever have snow on the sidewalk or any snow concerns, you can reach out to us and we will happily look into those and get the snow moved so that we can keep our sidewalks accessible to everyone. Otherwise, we will have more information coming up in March and April about swim team and swim lesson registration as we get forward to another great summer season.
Great, thank you, Jack. Any questions for the MCA? If not, we will move on to our special guest. We're very happy to have Grace Rink here with us. She's the Executive Director of the Office of Climate Action, Sustainability, and Resiliency. I also want to acknowledge Taylor Mollers, who's here. Taylor heads up the Sustainable Neighborhoods Program and has been a good friend to this organization for a number of years now. She's here as well. Grace, take it away. If you have slides, we're happy to turn it over to you, or you're welcome just to speak freely.
Great, I do have slides if you don't mind.
Sure.
So I just go to share screen.
I think we have to stop sharing my screen first.
Looks like I'm allowed to do it. Let's see.
Oh, you are. You can overtake me, huh? Oh,
I have. I've muscled my way in.
There you are.
Let's see what happens when I do this. Okay, good. So you guys should all be seeing my screen. Yep. All right. Well, wonderful. Thank you so much for having us here this evening. As in my introduction, my name is Grace Rink, and I'm the Executive Director of the Office of Climate Action, Sustainability, and Resiliency for the City and County of Denver. And I'm also a Central Park neighbor. I live in Willow Park East. I think that's what it's called. I'm still relatively new. And I'm also, in addition to Taylor, who's here and many of you are familiar with, I'm also joined by Art Mieja, who is from the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure. And so when we get into the Q&A, Art will help field many questions. So we're here to talk about a proposal that would improve the waste hauling service that the city provides for residents and also begin charging a fee for this service. This has been talked about for a long time, but we're finally getting close to having an ordinance ready for City Council's consideration. So tonight, I'd like to tell you about it and hear your ideas for how you might be able to make it work for your family. So this presentation takes like maybe 8 or 10 minutes, and then whatever time you have left, we'll be able to have discussion. So we're going to review how our waste service currently operates, how this issue is connected to climate change, and then how this new proposal would work. So make sure we're on the same page. The city of Denver collects trash for about 180,000 households, which is about 60% of our residents. We provide this service to all single-family homes and small apartment buildings up to 7 units. And the agency that performs the service is Dottie. And the rest of the city's residents and all businesses have to contract with private companies for their trash service. So in this conversation, we're only talking about the city's customers. So those 180,000 residents in single family homes and small apartment buildings. Now, our service is paid for through the city's general fund, which is where all of our property taxes and sales taxes go to fund all the services and programs offered by the city of Denver. Now, everyone pays into that, even visitors. We do not charge our customers for trash or recycling, and we offer compost pickup, but customers have to pay just under $10 a month for that. Now, 74% of our waste goes straight to landfill. You'll hear us talk about the diversion rate a few times tonight. That number combines recycling plus the amount of compostable waste that we're not sending to landfill. That's why it's called diversion. So Denver's combined recycling and composting rate is 26%, which is below the national average. And interestingly, it's only grown 1 or 2% a year for the last 20 years. We would like to get to a 50% diversion rate, but at this pace, it'll take another 25 years to get there. Now, when it comes to climate change, landfill emissions really do matter. Methane is a potent greenhouse gas that is created as waste rots in the landfill. Methane actually does more damage to the atmosphere than carbon, but it also leaves the atmosphere much faster than carbon. So as the quote here states, if we can stop emitting all sources of methane as soon as possible, it will make a noticeable improvement in our lifetime. And, we have to remember why we do this environmental work, why we work on climate action. Poor air quality right here in Denver and the negative impacts of climate change, like extreme heat hurts the people in places that we love so much. And specifically, Denver's climate efforts are centered on equity. The Latino and Black communities in Denver and our children are the most burdened by climate change. And we have to do more, and we have to do what it takes to improve our environment so that they can have a higher quality of life. Now, the blue sections in this map here in the corner, they indicate the communities with lower access to healthcare, lower access to healthy food and parks, higher rates of poverty, and increased vulnerability to extreme heat, and other quality of life indicators that the city's trying to improve. Now, and many of you have been in Denver for a long time. You may have heard these conversations over the years. There have been many people over decades trying to improve and increase the amount of waste that we divert from landfill and that we recycle. They've been doing that for a long time. We've really done all we can to increase recycling and encourage our customers to compost through education and outreach. And over all these years, there's one solution that keeps coming up, and that's moving to a fee-based system. So like this, there are a number of cities across the US where fee-based programs for trash service are already working. So some of the cities on this map have recycling and composting rates that are 2 or 3 times as high as Denver's. And the one thing that they have in common is charging a fee for hauling trash while providing recycling and composting for free. So that's the foundation. And now I can actually move into talking about the proposal and how it would work. So if we're able to move to a fee-based service, it's important to know upfront that by state law, the fee can only cover what it costs the city to operate the waste hauling service. So the list here shows you what would be included in the cost of service. Every service that we offer now would be included along with 2 major changes. 1, weekly recycling, and 2, composting for all customers. These are huge changes for Denver. And we've heard loud and clear from our customers, this is what they want. You know, no more overflowing recycling carts or having to put some of your recycling in trash cans. And here's how it would work. First, our customers would get to choose the size of the trash cart they want, small, medium, or large. And the service fee would vary based on the size of the trash cart. So the smallest cart has the lowest fee, the largest cart would have the highest fee. And recycling and composting carts would be available in these same sizes. We know that space is an issue, and the smallest carts do take up the least amount of space. We need every customer to pay a base fee to keep the trucks running by each house and taking the trash away. The cost difference between the cart sizes will encourage our customers to choose the smallest cart size that works for their family and maximize their use of the recycling and composting carts. Now, we know that fees are hard and it may be difficult for our low-income neighbors and people on fixed incomes. So we are able to offer an instant rebate to reduce their bill. Eligibility will be based on income and household size. And we use what's called the area median income table to determine that eligibility. That way, big households who may really need the largest garbage cart can get financial assistance for that service. We'll be able to apply the rebate to the bill so it's convenient for customers, and renters will be eligible for rebates as well. Now, we understand, paying a fee is hard, but we've worked hard to keep the fee as low as possible. And our rate will be the lowest in the region. So this slide shows the actual costs that people pay in other cities when they have to hire their own trash company. And from what we know, only a few local cities offer composting, like Boulder and Longmont. And it's really important to note, there are no other cities or haulers, not only in Colorado, but really across the United States, that offer a discount program for low-income households, which we're ready to do. So this is the timeline we're in right now. If all goes according to this plan, and that includes if City Council were to vote to approve this proposal, then we'd have the program up and running by the end of this year. And as you can imagine, there's plenty of work to do between now and then, and that's why having these conversations is so important. And that's actually the end of my slideshow. I'm going to take it down so I can see you again. But I'm happy to bring it back up, to bring any of the slides up as you have questions. And Jeff, I'll leave it to you to MC the Q&A.
Sure. Who has a question they'd like to ask? Thank you, Grace. Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, my question is, I saw the fees that go up or that would be added for trash, but my question is, what happens to the fee for compost? Does compost then become free?
Yes, it does. And all customers will get a compost cart. If they don't want it, they can tell us to take it back, but they're all going to get it.
Brad, not to put you on the spot, but it looked like you might have had a question.
Oh, I don't have a question. I just am really excited for this proposal. So thank you all for bringing this forward. I think I would also just say for the neighborhood, we are really lucky that we have a store called the Zero Market in the Stanley Marketplace nearby that can also help folks with reducing the amount of trash that their household produces too. So no question, just very excited for this proposal.
Thank you.
Grace, a cynic might wonder, are people just going to start dumping trash into their recycling bin?
There are many cynics who have asked that question. It's a totally valid question. Well, the first thing that we need to do is educate our customers, right? We have to educate people on the benefits of sorting their waste properly and why it's beneficial to get more of it into the recycling cart and the composting cart. That's not always easy to do. And you're right, there are some folks who might, even out of spite, decide, I'm going to throw it where I want to throw it. There will have to be an enforcement mechanism at some point. It's not going to be in the first month, right? So if people are getting it wrong, we would like to work with them first. And only when the contamination seems to be going on for a long time, after we've done a lot of outreach, at some point we might have to remove a compost cart from a customer if they're really putting all their trash in it. Because what happens then if that contaminated load goes into a truck, it really contaminates the whole load, and it's just going to end up increasing the city's costs over time. So we're going to do everything we can to work with customers before we have to take a cart away.
Any other questions? Grace, do you mind running through the timeline again?
Yep, I did see Mark raise his hand.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I like to let everyone else go first before I get a second question. But we have 2 recycling bins, but the pickup is only every other week. Is that going to change at all? Like, would it become weekly pickup instead of every other week so that we stop overflowing our bins and stuff?
That's exactly the major service improvement that we're trying to deliver through this. I mean, in addition to giving everyone composting, is to move to weekly recycling. And so, I mean, it's possible you might still need 2 carts, but maybe you'd be able to go down to 1 and take up less space. I should say, and Art's here and he can address this as well. Jeff, since you just asked about the timeline, I did say that we want to have this in place by the end of the year, and that's absolutely the goal. Art, my colleague here, who's the director of solid waste management, he is working day and night to get us the trucks that we need to actually roll out weekly recycling and composting for all on day 1. And so day 1 will be determined when Art is absolutely confident that we'll have the trucks in hand. Yes, Mark.
Sorry to have all the questions, but so if you have that much more composting going on, are you going to have trouble getting rid of all that compost, or can we get some free compost?
Oh, that's a really good question. Getting rid of the compost. So, I mean, they say Art nodding. So Art, I might go to you next, but we deliver our compostable material to a processor. And then of course, it then becomes their material and it's their responsibility to, work with end markets to, to have it sold. But a lot of it can go to agriculture, which is tremendous. We do sell, or not we, there is a product called Denver's own EcoGrow compost. And we certainly would like to see the market for that increasing here in Denver and throughout the region. So undoubtedly marketing for that will increase with this program as well. Art, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that.
Yeah, in addition to that, I'm going to start working on an extension, not necessarily an extension, but improvements to the contract that we currently have with A1. Part of my ask is going to be some type of free composting for residents. Obviously, we are expecting a huge amount of compost to go through their doors once this program goes live. So we're going to have some asks that I'm going to be making to them and try to rework the contract that we have.
Thanks, Art, and it's nice to meet you. Thank you for joining us.
Nice meeting you.
Grace, could you talk a little bit more about what the outreach efforts will be for in neighborhoods where recycling adoption might be low?
Yeah, and we do know some neighborhoods that historically have had lower recycling rates. We actually don't track recycling per neighborhood. It's easier for us to track composting per neighborhood because our customers currently have to pay for that service. But we do know where we've had lower recycling rates over time. And one of the things we're planning to do, at least with the beginning of the outreach effort here, especially for that discount program, is to actually contract with community-based organizations to do a lot of the outreach for us because they are trusted messengers in communities. And so I think that once, we're going to start with having them help us work on getting the word out about the affordability program, but then we also need to use their help to get the message out about how to use a 3-cart system and actually make it work for your household.
Any other questions or comments? Hey, Mandel.
Yeah, I've got a question. What's going to happen with the large item pickup and extra trash? Is that going to be still in effect, and are there going to be fees associated with that?
I'll go over to you, Art.
Yeah, so extra trash is obviously going back to every 4 weeks. At this point, we don't have, it's going to continue to be a free service. We don't have any plans to changing that when we go live with this program.
When the new trash bins come out, will we swap the ones that we have? Do we keep the ones that we have? How does that work?
You will keep your trash cans, everything you have, right? If you already have compost, if you have recycling, you will keep everything that you already have. The only difference is going to be if you don't have containers, if you don't have recycling or compost containers, we will deliver those to you. I'm assuming that everybody has trash.
Okay, so I'm wondering about someone that might have a larger trash can that wants to downsize to pay the lower fee, is they can just swap those on a regular trash day? Is that how that would work?
Yes, they're gonna have to call in, right? They're gonna have
Sure.
to make an appointment, and yes, we will swap them out. We will right size the containers.
Okay, and is calling in into 311, is that the best way?
311 or utilities online. That's another tool that we have. If you don't want to make a phone call, you can just go online and make that request.
Great.
So back to the question about the large item and extra trash. So how would you structure that on a fee? How would you collect a fee for that if it's like once every 4 weeks? Is that because I understand if we get a bin that's, you know, small, medium, or large, that's just going to be a monthly fee associated with that bin. But if like some people have extra trash, some people don't. So will you have to sign up and pay in advance for that, or how's that going to work?
If you're talking about the extra trash program that we have, that program is going to be free. There's going to be no additional charge for that.
Okay. Okay. So the large item pickup, is that not a part of the extra trash?
Yes, that's included in there. Large item and extra trash. It's technically the same program.
I got you. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Grace or Art? If not, Grace, Art, Taylor, thank you very much for joining us. I appreciate you taking the time on a Tuesday evening. I'll echo what Brad noted in the comment section, which that I think as far as Central Park residents go, weekly recycling will be very well received.
Great. Thank you so much for having us. It was a pleasure being with all of you. Maybe I'll come back one day as just a resident.
I hope so.
Okay.
Thanks, Grace.
Thanks
Bye,
so much.
Art. Bye, Taylor. We are pretty close to keeping on time here. We do have our 5-minute public comment window for anyone that might want to share something. Going once, twice. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. We'll take a little break here. I'll just request that the board members be back here at 7:30 and we'll get started right away. The board meeting is open to the public. Anyone that's on the call and interested is welcome to stay as well. Yeah, take a couple minutes yourselves and we'll see you at the bottom of the hour. Thanks, everyone. If you're on the board and back, do you mind turning on your camera? Just so I know who's there. Hi, Amanda.
Hey, Jeff.
I see Jack frantically waiting.
I'm back, Mark. Brian.
You wanted to know if
Jeff.
we were back. I had to just let you know. Make sure I don't want to be forgotten.
Fat
Thanks,
chance.
Thanks, everybody. I do want to get started promptly, and I want to prepare everybody that I might have to shuffle some things around on the agenda to move through as much as I can, as quickly as I can, because we've slotted the second half hour, so from 8 to 8:30 for Travis Leiker, who's graciously joined us from Capitol Hill United Neighbors, and I want to make sure that we give Travis that full time. So appreciate everyone if some topics feel a bit rushed, or if they have to be omitted altogether. I think the first thing we want to do is run through our committee updates. I'll start for Communication and Outreach Committee. The big initiative that we're working on right now is that Welcome Bags project. Mandel is fighting the good fight to try to get quality bags at a reasonable price. And Jeff Eder, in his role as interim, I'll call it, president of CPBA, he and I are going to meet on Friday to talk, amongst other things, about what the process has been with CPBA, who has managed that effort in the past, and a potential collaboration or transition to CPUN doing it in the future. And also we have continued our we've submitted our next month's entry for the front porch, and that's just going to be a regular part of our operating procedure going forward. Who is here from Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee?
Wait.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mark.
Outreach. I wanted to add that I am working my way through the survey results, and hopefully we'll be able to have a few, I would call them mini presentations or something like that we can do for the board, for the community at large, and I'll try to get for each of the committees, whatever questions you had in there, some kind of summary put together for each of you. So that'll happen within the next month.
Thanks, Mark. Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion.
Yeah, so the update that I have is just that we're still working on the survey, and we've reached out to Amanda to see if we can solicit her help on that. And so we're looking forward to that. The other thing I would say is that the plan is to kind of keep people up to date as you know, the months go by with email updates. So if there's anybody online who is not signed up, you can go to the Central Park United Neighbors website and you can sign up for the email list. That's it.
Thanks, Mandel. Carol, we had your update in the outreach hour. Do you have anything for education that's
no, I will pass. Go ahead.
Okay. Thanks, Carol. Health and safety.
Yes. So I'm just gonna take a second to respond to some of the messages we're having here in the chat about our firescaping, landscaping to prevent fires. That is something that is an issue that the MCA is actually currently looking into. And I haven't yet had a chance to speak with Health and Safety Committee about this. We'll be meeting next week. But that is something that we're also going to talk about as well, and see if we might be able to work with the fire department to see what type of vulnerabilities might exist in the neighborhood.
Great. And Brooke, forgive me, I didn't notice your question until just now. Jack, thanks for following up with that. Safe streets.
All right. Sorry, I was a few minutes late joining the meeting. Do you all talk about the bike lane at all?
Only in sort of broad celebratory terms, not with much specificity on the details.
Nice. Well, yeah, I think obviously that's first off the bat. If you haven't been on Central Park Boulevard between Montview and 36 lately. I checked it last week, and it looks like they have the sort of the stenciling done for where the protected bike lane is going to go, at least northbound. They might have done more since then. Anyway, I'm in talks with Dottie around planning sort of a celebratory event, and we might just make it coincide with winter bike to work day on the 11th. So stay tuned there. And then we have our next meeting on February 1st, where we will have Mike King from Dottie, who's one of the architects of the 20 is plenty ordinance, which would sort of move the default speed limits, as we talked about before, in residential areas from 25 to 20 miles per hour. So if anyone's interested, we'd love to have you all there. And we're really going to talk about just kind of next steps and what implementation looks like, because there's a lot of questions and concerns. So anyway, really excited about that.
Great. Sustainability.
I think Brad and I are waiting to see who goes first. Brad and I had a good discussion with a couple other neighbors about what we're going to cover this year in sustainability. We've got next month coming up a roundtable discussion that the city's helping organize about the Harvest Project, sort of expanding that, finding more places to do fruit trees and whatnot. And then we had a range of other stuff that escapes me right now. Maybe Brad remembers because he's younger than I am.
That's right. Well, with 2 kids under 3, I think my memory is pretty spotty right now too. So, the only other thing is I think we're also working on finalizing for March a guest speaker from a group called Rewiring America, which is essentially kind of an advocacy group around replacing all of your natural gas-based appliances inside your house. So if you have a natural gas hot water heater or an HVAC system or a gas oven, replacing them with their electric versions. So it's really kind of like a how-to on how to do it. And they're big on trying to get neighborhoods organized to do it too. So can you get any discounts if you organize your neighbors to all get the same service at the same time? And Mark and I just sort of thought it was really timely, because I think a lot of our homes are getting to that point where that basic infrastructure inside your home might need to be replaced sometime soon from when it was first built. So again, if you're really interested in that kind of stuff and you have some home remodeling projects coming up, it might be good to take a look at what we got going on in March.
Great. Thanks, everyone. And I don't want to overstate what is at this point exploratory, but getting back to that roundtable that Mark mentioned, I'm really excited about it. And it's a great example of what organizations like this one can do in their communities, and how quickly it can be adopted elsewhere. The idea is to take our fruit harvest project that we started this fall and see if we can take it potentially citywide, starting with the sustainable neighborhoods, participating neighborhoods. So it's really cool to see this project go from an idea to something like this in relatively short period of time. I think less than a year for sure. So I'm excited about that. Jack, are we all set for next month's guest speaker during the outreach hour? That's your appointment, right?
Yes.
Great.
Yes, and it sounds like I'm also going to be finding you someone from the fire department to come speak with us. So stay tuned. Yes.
Okay. Why don't we go on to the bylaws and the election of the former president role. So all the votes passed, as everybody recalls. Brian, do you happen to have the updated bylaws handy?
Not handy, Jeff.
Okay, that's fine. I'll make sure that everybody gets the link here. The officers all reviewed the language this week, and it looks good. So we can formalize that if we'll give everybody, say, through the end of the week to just take a look and make sure that the new language looks right to everybody. But we can proceed with the first action item that came out of those bylaw changes, which is the election of a former president to the officers pool, and I'd like to do that this evening. I would like to nominate Amanda Alshouse, who is, and not just because she's the only eligible person, but because I think she'll do a fantastic job in supporting the committee. So did I hear a second?
Yes, you did.
Okay.
Thanks. I accept the nomination.
Are there any objections? We'll phrase it that way. If not, Amanda, welcome back to the Officers Committee.
Thank you.
I will make sure everyone has a link to the updated bylaws before the end of the evening. Do try to take a look at them if you can in the next couple of days. We'd like to finalize those and get them posted. And just so that everybody knows, now that we have Aurora in our footprint, I'll be trying to connect with the Aurora Police Department specifically. That was the group that we identified as wanting to invite into our regular outreach meeting cycle. So hopefully we'll have some updates for everybody on that by next month. If they're not present, hopefully that we can work that out. Okay, so this is the next thing I wanted to talk a little bit about. I got a email just this morning from Tammy Holloway. You'll recall she's the executive director for the foundation. She's also on the, I think I said earlier, SCD board, but I meant SDC board. And she reached out to say that they're exploring a process to determine what should happen, if anything, in terms of qualifying candidates for the PCMD board. This is one of the conditions that you'll recall in the dispute between the two entities was representation on that Park Creek board. She has said that historically, the SDC board makes those decisions unilaterally, but they want to have a more open, community informed process this time around, and invited our organization to be among those represented in that process. What I don't know is what that process entails, what the time commitment is, when it starts, when it ends, any of that kind of stuff. However, I do know that an email is going to be circulated later this week with what they do know now. I'm prepared to serve as CPUN's representative, given my role as president, but I did want to make the whole board aware of the opportunity. If it's something that anyone is particularly interested in joining as well, I'm sure that can be arranged. Just let me know and I'll make sure that we facilitate that conversation. Are there any kind of immediate questions that I might be able to answer about this?
Jeff, I'd be willing to help in any way I can. Don't necessarily know that we need two people, but if they would give us two, you know, I'm happy to help with that.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Anybody else want to ask anything or comment on that? If you're not familiar with the SDC board, their website's actually really helpful in terms of laying out the history of and timeline of how the organization came about and what their role is and how it's evolved. So you might just check that out if you're curious. Anything else? Brian, can I skip to the treasurer's report? Is that okay?
I other than what's on the page, we did pay this year's bill for the Nation Builder, so our reserve balance went down, but we do, as I think everybody on the board knows, we did send a request to the foundation for their support this year, so that should be temporary. And I think the other thing to call out is that the fundraising committee is almost up to $3,000 this year, so good shape there.
Yeah.
Any questions?
Just a quick update. In the same email, Tammy indicated that they're prepared to fulfill our grant request for a second year. That's not surprising, but it's nice assurance to have. As far as fundraising goes, well done to that committee, Jeff Ederer. Thank you for all your work on that. That's a bigger number than we typically have. So
no problem. We're going to try and make it bigger this year. That will Mark.
All right. Okay, so we've got about 15 minutes, and the last topic that before we turn things over to Travis is open board seat outreach. There's a few different things involved here. One, just want to acknowledge the email that we all got today that Jay has decided to step down from the board as she'll be moving out of Denver. And she's not here this evening, but I do want to thank her for her time on the board. And as I said in my email to her, she and I did a lot of work together on the education committee in 2017, 18, that kind of time period. That I'll remember her fondly for, so I wish her the best. So we now actually have an additional open seat. We've increased from 15 to 19. We're now down to 14 active board members, which leaves us with 5 seats. There's the thing to the kind of time frame that we want to have in mind here is our May annual meeting. We get to this time of the year where we put a recruitment committee together, and they kind of have a big job and a small job. The small job is to organize the slate. Some percentage of us, roughly half, are due for election again. And so the small job is just going through and validating who it needs to be up for election again, confirming with those folks that they want to continue to serve on the board and likely for another 2-year term. So that's part of it. The second part is to help with the interview process for any prospective board candidates. And I forgive me. I hope. Oh, he's left. Mark Gillitz had reached out to me and was on the call for the outreach. I was hoping he might stick around for the board hour. He's someone that's expressed some interest in the board. So we have to organize some kind of interview committee for board members. For Brad, Jamie, Jack, you will remember, I'm sure, being interviewed by myself and Mark and Mandel and maybe a couple of other folks as well. So I think the ask here is to consider whether or not you'd be willing to serve on such a committee. And I think a big part that's a little bit unique this year is keeping in mind that one of the reasons why we expanded the board size is that we want to make sure we're representing the fullest coverage of constituents that we can. Now that we have Aurora residents, for example, the far north end has been a point of emphasis for us in 2022. Renters, etc. So there's a little bit of work to be done in trying to identify candidates from those areas as well. Any other thoughts about the scope of the project that we have here, or the timeline that we might be operating on?
Do we have you nailed down a date of the annual forum? And just in terms of timeline with the
No, that's a good point. I have not. Usually it's, what is it, man, in the first 2 or 3 weeks of May.
Yeah, the tricky thing with scheduling it is like, well, if you're trying to get updates from people who are responsible for retail, there's a retail conference in Las Vegas, and if things are back in person, then that pulls people away, which makes the third Tuesday, which is when we usually meet, a conflict for that. So I think that just reaching out to the people who are sort of key speakers for the development side of things, if that's the emphasis of this year's meeting, is a starting point. And then just ensuring that the third Tuesday wouldn't conflict. Maybe it doesn't this year.
I see something about Las Vegas Convention Center Smart Retail Tech thing on May 24th, which would be a week later. So it's possible that it's That's a little later than it usually is. So we
Okay.
might be okay this year.
Any other thoughts about the recruitment committee or comments, concerns?
Yeah, Jeff, I think I brought this up at the last meeting or one of the meetings, was just getting a sense of the, I guess, the demographics or geographic kind of spread of current board. I feel like is key to kind of figuring out the recruitment also.
Yeah, that's a great point, Liz. And you did mention that, and I forgot I forgot to follow up on that. What I was thinking of doing, if we don't have it already, is just a dot map of generally where current board members live, so we can kind of see where we have representation and where we don't.
Got it.
To do that. Thanks for the reminder, Liz.
And Jeff, I would call out too that while we increase the board to 19, doesn't mean we have to fill all the seats if we don't have interested candidates either. And that gives the board some flexibility if people come and are interested later. So I think that's the decision of the committee and the board.
That's a really important point, Brian. Thanks for underlining that, because we did talk about that in the decision making around whether or not to add that bylaw change. Is we do have to have some discipline about making sure we're using those seats effectively. So why don't I put together a spreadsheet? I think we know already who the slate is likely to be amongst existing board members, and I can kind of try to organize some recruitment committee slots on that spreadsheet as well, and I'll circulate that as well. And we can see once you've all had a chance to think about it, whether or not that's something you're interested in doing.
Jeff, do you have the list of, I guess I was maybe the last person to chair a recruitment committee, which probably means that I'm on the slate this time. But anyway, I can turn over the list of questions that actually, maybe we intentionally decided not to recruit anyone. So I'm not sure that we have a list of screening questions. Where this was supposed to be going was, would you be willing to turn over your list of screening questions or just interest questions that you used that had board input to the committee? And if I have such a list, I'll also do that, but I'm pretty sure that I don't, because I don't think that we actually pursued bringing anyone on this time last year.
Yeah, I think that's right, Amanda, because I don't think did we have spots? I don't remember. But yes, I'm happy to provide the questions. Oh, we did have one spot? Okay.
And Jeff, I stopped sharing so I could, I've got so up for election is Amanda, Jeff Barron, Jay was on that list, Mandel, Jeff Ederer, Carol, and Sandra.
Okay. Great. I'll compile everything that I've got, Amanda, and then I'll let you add to it as well, and then we'll circulate it amongst the board if that works.
That works. Thank you.
Great. Any other? I just want to make sure anyone that has a thought about the recruitment and the outreach specifically has a chance to say so. I think that's going to be just a big part of this. I think you can count on the outreach committee to collaborate on communications, things like that. Liz has graciously stepped our Facebook game up in a couple of different areas, which has been really nice. And I think we want to cast a wide net here.
And Jeff, I had shared with you and the other exec members, the two people that had expressed interest.
Yeah.
So we've got the beginnings of a spreadsheet. So if you could potentially just add on to that from the recruitment process, then we.
Okay. All right. Well, that wasn't as hard to get through as I thought it was going to be. I was worried that we'd be out of time. We actually have a couple more minutes. Does anybody have anything they want to talk about that I didn't mention? If not, we'll get started with Travis Leiker a little early. Hi, Travis. How are you?
I am well. How are you all?
Very well. Thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Pardon me?
Y'all can hear me okay, correct?
Oh, yeah. You sound great.
Okay, great.
So just for the board, a little bit of background and context on Travis joining us this evening. You might recall that in October, Carol forwarded a statement that had been issued by the unhoused, suddenly I blanked on the name. Yeah, thank you. Forgive me. Sorry, Travis. That we were invited to sign on to. The board came back with a number of questions for the Unhoused Action Coalition that we felt like we needed answering before we would be comfortable signing on to such a statement. That was sort of a list of 10 key action items that the UAC was calling on the city and county to execute. Carol then removed the topic from the agenda so that she could then go and gather more information. And she and Liz did just that, which is to meet with Travis and learn more about the UAC and what their goals are. And so we decided together that the next best step would be to invite Travis to join us and to have him talk a little bit about the work of the UAC, what the organization's goals are, and how this board and how Central Park residents might get more involved. Carol or Liz, would you add anything to that or amend it?
I would just say that Travis received questions from us. Jeff and Liz and I had a conversation, a couple of conversations, and then Liz and I had a conversation with Travis. And so he received some very specific questions that I'm sure he'll address tonight. So did you want to add anything, Liz?
No, you guys got it.
Great. So Travis, again, thank you for joining us. How would you like to start? Do you have anything? Do you have a
slide deck?
A slide deck?
No slide deck, but I'm going to do my best to pack in 2.5 years of work and conversation. It just occurred to me that we've been doing this work for about 2 years now, into the next 30 minutes to be respectful of folks' time. So for those of you who don't know me, Travis Leiker, President and Executive Director of Capitol Hill United Neighborhoods, and I'm one of those strange R&O leaders who live in Central Park, actually, but work in Capitol Hill. So that's how I'm President and Executive Director of another registered neighborhood organization. CHUN's Denver's largest and oldest registered neighborhood organization. We were founded in 1969. And so our work has really been front and center in terms of central issues as it relates to zoning, transportation, and land use for the better part of 52 years now. So to give you some context in terms of what brought us to this conversation today, it started around the beginning of the pandemic in March of 2020, where a number of groups, especially CHUN, were grappling with the seemingly growth and expansion of unsanctioned encampments that we see in many places throughout the city, but most notably in central Denver. And it was in the course of these conversations, we started brainstorming and having a discussion with Uptown on the Hill, R&O, which is North Capitol Hill, as well as the Colfax Avenue Business Improvement District, which spans from the state capitol to York Street, and started brainstorming how and to what extent we as R&O leaders, in many cases volunteers, were capable of instituting policies or moving the city forward on issues facing the unhoused. Concurrent to that, obviously, we were faced with the global pandemic, COVID-19, and needed to make some calls in terms of what do we do next and how do we triage both the increase in unsanctioned encampments that we were seeing throughout the community, plus how do you work with a community that is unhoused and not availing themselves to services provided by shelters and other accommodations throughout the city in the context of a pandemic where many people would not feel safe for all the obvious reasons in a shelter. And so during the course of that conversation, what started with Uptown on the Hill, Colfax Avenue, and then Capitol Hill United Neighborhoods, we did bring on the Golden Triangle as a partner because they too were also faced with encampments at the library or in front of the art museum and certainly Civic Center Park, many of you have probably read about. And during the course of these discussions and negotiations, we started sifting through all the data that we were receiving, both anecdotal and also via surveys and whatnot. And we came together and conceptualized and developed and presented to the City Council as well as the Mayor's office a 10-point action plan ranging from initiating a bring us your best ideas strategy to address the unhoused issue and unsanctioned encampments that we were seeing throughout the city, to status reports from the Mayor's office, to expanding the list of potential temporary safe outdoor sites. You may have seen some news stories about the 2 pilot sites in Capitol Hill, but also the others that have been successfully established throughout the city. And then really engaging key stakeholders throughout the community, namely property owners, because we had a number of conversations with property owners ranging from the Catholic Church and some vacant dormitories for studying priests to hotels to warehouses and the like. And where we were getting stuck in terms of our interface with the city was the fact that we were having these really robust conversations with our partners in the community, and they were open to supporting our city's efforts to help the unhoused, but they were hitting roadblocks with the city. And so that's where this coalition sort of received life, which was, how do we serve as a conduit between the community and our membership, respective memberships, and the city, and sort of, advocating on behalf of our respective groups, but also pushing the city to do more and do things differently, because we know that in complex bureaucratic organizations like the city, sometimes things don't move as swiftly as we need them to do. And that's not necessarily good for groups like ours when we're triaging and responding to a number of inquiries at the community level, be it a member or a small business owner or what have you, HOA. And so that's what got started in the summer of 2020, was this formulation of a 10-point action plan. Since that time, we've grown and have seen the launch and success of 2 temporary safe outdoor sites. That was in the late 2020, early 2021, and the 2 pilot programs in Capitol Hill, which we were the home of. And then we saw the expansion of temporary safe outdoor sites in Park Hill, at Regis University, and now at 38th Avenue and 8th and Elodie. And so what we started discovering was, 1, safe outdoor spaces work. 2, we still have more work to do in terms of some of our other key measurements and concepts that we were advocating on behalf of with the city. And 3, we were discovering that a lot of RNOs were having the same conversations with city leadership, but in different forms. And we decided, why don't we all start banding together for the sake of efficiency and also unity? And so as these conversations developed, we brought on City Park West, South City Park, Curtis Park, the Rhino Arts District, Old San Rafael Neighborhood Association, and have now evolved to bringing on West Wash Park, Alamo Placida, the Ballpark Collective, University Hills, Baker Neighborhood, and so forth. So if you think of this sort of advocacy work that we've been engaged in as a continuum, as we were leveraging our respective roles and then also advocating for clear, measurable goals, the city either in direct response or not so direct response was heeding our calls for action. So I'll give you a couple of examples. We had advocated for a more simple version of what is a very robust action plan as it relates to housing. We said, let's break it down and make it actually a 12 to 18 month set of goals. We saw the city respond to that. we championed more safe outdoor sites in all council districts and encourage all council members to be fully bought into the approach. We see some unity as it relates to city council and buy-in and funding as it relates to temporary safe outdoor sites. We called for the onboarding of more hotels and voucher programs to help those who may be in couples and unhoused, or those with pets who are unhoused. Again, and so again, we're seeing responses to our work, and we're all unified in our messaging. And then we also have come to the aid of organizations like the Colorado Village Collaborative, when some folks in Park Hill decided to file what I believe to be, and what my colleagues believe to be, an unfortunate legal suit against the then Park Hill temporary safe outdoor site. And so we stood with them shoulder to shoulder in terms of the efficacy of safe outdoor sites, and then also testified against before the Board of Adjustment the levels of frivolous legal challenges to what was, for all intents and purposes, a pretty effective program. And we saw the fruits of that labor in Capitol Hill. We also have played a leading role in drafting the Good Neighbor Agreements to allow for various support programs to exist throughout the city. So on our website, chundenver.org, you'll see some of the Good Neighbor Agreements that we put together that are robust and mighty, but also provided the guardrails for non-housed programs and service providers to do the work that they need to do, but also for us to be good neighbors to those who are housed and unhoused. So in many cases, this coalition has played the role of mediator between what can be hostilities and anger and frustration, and then also those who are engaged in the provision of direct services. So fast forward, here we are. The city has issued a 150-page housing plan, which is great. We're glad to see the city deliver that. We also see now that the city has assembled a 12 to 18 month action plan with respect to housing. And so the most recent iteration, and I'm pulling up the memo now, that I'm really getting great at writing memos and policy statements collectively. And it's nothing short of a miracle to get 12 to 15 different registered neighborhood organizations all on the shared same page and shared vision. But we have, and I think that that's the beauty of what's coming together. So where we've left things as it relates to this initiative, we gave a brand to our work. So now we are the Unhoused Action Coalition, because we recognize that this is a citywide issue requiring citywide solutions. That's why you see the growing diversity in the groups that we have assembled, ranging from Ballpark to Capitol Hill to West Wash Park to University Hills. We also know that Central Park is not alone nor immune to some of the challenges facing communities, as well as our unhoused neighbors. And so the most recent iteration of our action plan still is calling for a cross-departmental strategy, because we do see some gaps in terms of the communication between agencies within the city. We are still adamant that a single point of contact and management needs to be appointed by the city to spearhead this work. This pressing, vexing issues like the homeless challenges in the city require a single point of contact. And in many cases at the national state level, you see the appointment of a czar. I'm not crazy about that term, but we do need somebody who really is guiding the ship as it relates to homelessness only, and what's our challenge and what are our solutions in terms of aiding those in need. We are supportive as a coalition of site-specific customization with respect to public property being available to those who are unhoused. Data is continuing to be a problem with respect to where people are, what services they need, how many people are currently unhoused, and what is the level of service for each person. And so we are still continuing to advocate for more opportunities as it relates to data gathering. And then, you know, we have some other items on our wish list, which is a more ambitious goal to deliver affordable housing, inclusionary zoning practices. So that might be maybe not having such stringent parking requirements for an affordable housing property, or taking an abandoned hotel and transitioning it and transforming it into trauma-informed housing solutions for those who are on the path to economic self-sufficiency. Also, we want to know a little bit more about the breakdown of the city funds and how those are being utilized. And then we also want more partnership from the city. Something I say often, and I know my colleagues will probably get tired of me saying this, but there needs to be a surgical nature in which we deploy and deliver affordable housing solutions to those who need affordable housing, who seek the pathway to self-sufficiency from an economic and housing stability perspective, but also aiding those who are unhoused and providing those services. And with this collective of 12 to 15 organizations and growing, what we see is we have active partners. We are willing and ready to be partners. And historically, sometimes Sean my organization has been one of these organizations where the city and direct service providers and R&Os like us are not necessarily seeing eye to eye, and instead of going into collaborative work style, they go into adversarial relations. And so with 15 organizations and the sheer geographic footprint of those organizations, we have a collective of willing partners, and that should be the launching off point for a conversation around an affordable housing development, or onboarding a hotel for vouchers, or establishing a homeless shelter, or providing mental health services. So again, it's more of instead of this adversarial relationship, we're just calling for more collaboration with us. So with that, I'm going to hit pause because I hope that adequately answers the history. And then I'm going to go to my other screen right here to make sure I've adequately answered the questions that you all had. I think I talked a little bit about how we arrived at those 10 points that we've developed over the course of the last 2 years.
Travis, if it's okay, can we just pause there to just give a little chance to ask about any questions they might have about the history before we pivot to the questions?
Great.
Any questions for Travis about how they've arrived at where they are today?
Well, I guess with the legal action that was brought with the site in Park Hill, that when I think that we were given the opportunity to tour that site, and my biggest question for our board member that toured was, did you get a chance to talk to the neighbors, and how did things sit with them? And then after that, the legal action happened. It's like, oh, well, I think that answers the question. So in general, do you have feedback from neighbors adjacent to the temporary facilities that are 6 months at a time in a certain location?
Well, it was an interesting journey, and I think I received more gray hair from that launch phase in Capitol Hill because we were the first sites. I'm not, it was a pretty heated discussion. We learned a lot from the direct service providers in terms of their onboarding of sites, when they announce, how they announce, what sites that they use, how do you custom craft, and how do you put together a good neighbor agreement. And at the onset, we had, I think, close to, and don't quote me on this figure, but it was close to maybe 300 people showing up in opposition to the safe outdoor sites that were in Capitol Hill. And then as the neighbor conversations progressed throughout the course of their 6 months, we were down to about 10 people participating in those meetings near the end. And I think it was because they brought certainty, predictability, and a certain set of guardrails initiated by us, the R&Os, around their onboarding and around their operations day to day. And what we did in addition to that was we insisted that they start with unsanctioned encampments in the immediate surrounding area, so that we could use this as a pilot program to say, okay, if you are unhoused and you are camped in an outlawn, and we know you may not be able to be there or should not be able to be there, come with us, come work with this SOS, this temporary safe outdoor site, and join us and let us get you the support and services that you need. And so what you saw was a decrease in unsanctioned encampments in the immediate surrounding area, and then an increase in occupancy at the safe outdoor spaces, and then delivery of services to those constituents. And so I can't speak with, great expertise on what happened with the Park Hill site, but there were references to legal challenges in Capitol Hill. There were references to sort of this adversarial or commitment to adversarial relationships. And it was not without hard work and not without a little bit of stress that we were able to calm the anxieties of the community and also ensure the success of those outdoor spaces.
And then the way that you described the movement from unsanctioned space to sanctioned space, over time, does the unsanctioned space just refill from people who weren't initially invited to participate because the spots that were left open were kind of like prime spots, and that's why they were taken in the first place? Does that tend to happen?
Not necessarily, because what we did was as neighborhood groups, we left the operations of the SOS side to the service providers. So Colorado Village Collaborative, and the second one was operated by Earthlinks. They're not operating anymore in the city right now because CVC is actually the preferred partner in this work with the city and has an actual contract. But what we did do is say, okay, if we spotted what seemed to be an encampment setting up, we would report that to the city, and then the city would deploy its services, the STAR team, and other direct service providers to go triage that before an encampment sort of flourished, if you will. And that worked to a certain degree, although we do our best to be the eyes and the ears on the ground, but it really is sort of, I mean, it was pretty consistent and present throughout, again, Chun's boundaries, but also elsewhere. So while maybe that 5-block radius was stable during that 6-month period, it's not to say that we didn't have other unsanctioned encampments elsewhere that we were trying to triage and provide service to. And again, or get the city to do that. So I don't know if that adequately answers the question, but again, in that controlled environment, we did see success, but there needs to be a backfill in terms of city services that weren't necessarily coming to the aid and support of those who are unhoused, and the speed that probably it needed to be done. And we're continuing to have that evolving conversation directly with the city to make sure that that's taken care of.
So I'm sensitive to time here, and I do want to give Travis a chance to answer some of these questions. Travis, I think the main one that I'd like to focus on is, so you've signed on, let's say we sign on to this call to action. What are the ways that that our residents can get involved? What are the things that you're doing other than issuing the statement to see this work through?
Well, these are great questions. So by signing on, we have weekly phone calls with various stakeholders in the city to get a progress report on the activities that they're engaged in. So we have met with community planning and development. We have met with excise and licensing as it relates to the licensing processes for the temporary SOSs. And some RNOs just signed on as a matter of principle. These are at least 10 things we can agree on as a collective of groups and organizations. And so you all get to choose who your point person is. We prefer it to be a board member. And then 2, participation in those ongoing conversations, and 3, helping us devise and conceptualize our next phases. And that's sort of the phase that we're in right now, which is what's next, because we see responses to our efforts, and then we're getting results. And now we're at the point of what happens next, and we'd love thought partners with regard to that. And then that is a weekly 1-hour call. The group is getting bigger, so we have more opinions to take into consideration. And yeah, but I think you can custom craft what you see CPUN and its level of engagement to be.
I was interested in your way of describing the relationship with I'll say the city. Obviously, you're working with specific departments. Is trying to avoid something adversarial, right? To be something more collaborative. The list makes good sense to me. Would the city or the people that you're dealing with from the city disagree with anything on the list?
No, I think that they think it's rooted in sound data, both anecdotal and hard. It's also thoughtful. We always go into these conversations and negotiations or advocacy efforts with good intentions and assume positive intentions on the part of the city. Because we know they have tough jobs and this is not easy work, and it's further complicated by the fact that we are living through a pandemic that doesn't seem to be subsiding anytime soon. And RNOs can be thought partners, and we're the eyes and ears on the ground in many of these communities, whether we work in those communities or we live in those communities or both. And that's, I think, our role as an organization is to provide feedback, but also say we could be doing this better. And that's what we've been doing. And while we are seeing some positive outcomes in certain areas, we see some deficiencies in others. And we're not afraid to call out those deficiencies, but we do it with diplomacy in mind.
Yeah. So when I first saw the proposal, the thought that I had was, this is a good list of things. I don't know that there's the dispute among the list items might be in the margins, right? That people that want to tackle this issue are supportive of this, but that the city might reasonably say, we're doing this already, we're doing all of these things, and we're doing the best that we can. And when I see language, the language that made me bristle a little bit was, we call on, asking people to do more of what they're already doing, versus what you said just now, which is, how can we help? And so can you talk about your philosophy or the organization's philosophy on the difference between we call on and how can we help?
Well, I would say, I think you basically answered that question for me, which was sometimes these edits and modifications or the tone and tenor of an issue statement like this or a policy statement like this really is, there were 8 people editing and writing this at the same time and putting it together. So some people needed a little bit more forceful language. Others, like me, preferred more toned down diplomatic language. And so I think what you see is just the art form of compromise. And in fact, judging by the font, that's not the most recent edition, but I can send the most.
Oh, forgive me if that's if I provided the wrong link.
Oh no, it's okay. No worries. Okay. And maybe we've toned that down, but I think it's just some of us come from this as grassroots activists, and that's okay. And then some of us come from this from a business perspective. And then I'll share the link. Again, the policy is not too different from this now, but I just don't know if you all are looking at the most recent edition. So check that out.
And again, apologies, Travis. I got that from the CHUN website, and if I overlooked a more recent publication, I apologize.
No, it's okay. We just issued this most recent draft in December. And I think what you had was in October.
Okay.
Of last year, not the October of the previous year, where there was another one issued at that time. And then collaboration, we are always leaning. I saw the question about Colorado Coalition for the Homeless in Stout Street. We're always looking to our experts. So we've met with a whole host of organizations ranging from day shelters to the Coalition to Stout Street to the Denver Animal Shelter and how we can provide services to those who are unhoused with pets. All of this data is analyzed, sifted through, and out of that comes recommendations from time to time or aha moments. And something I've been thinking about is how maybe we could do more direct support for those who are unhoused with pets and utilize the Denver Animal Shelter to do so. And so how do we be partners and champions in that? And then,
Travis, can I ask you one question?
Yeah, go.
Well, I will say, just here in the Central Park community, but more broadly, I will say, let me just check here. I think I have 13 emails from the last 2 weeks talking about homeless people and the crime that they are supposedly causing in our neighborhood. That's just the last 2 weeks. If you wanted a whole list, we could get into the data there. I'm wondering what type of efforts you are doing. Like, first off, do we have any empirical data that would suggest that there is a link between our sanctioned, our safe outdoor spaces, our sanctioned encampments, and an increase in crime? Would be my first question. Is there data that looks at that? And if there isn't, maybe we can work with our friends at the police department to get that type of data. And second, what approach are you taking with neighbors? Like, we don't have a safe outdoor space in our community, but I still have 13 emails from the last 7 days from people who are convinced that, homeless people are breaking into their houses. So I'm wondering what ways we can target that specific concern.
Well, something that we have done with respect to those corridors in Greater Capitol Hill that we have seen spikes in crimes is we've connected those HOAs or property owners with DPD to do some safety training with the community resource officers. And those have been proven to be pretty effective in terms of the outreach that they're able to do. So we work regularly with District 6 and their team to support those efforts. We have also flagged key corridors that have required more DPD attention. So a number of folks had been contacting our office with respect to Logan and Grant. And since then, there's been a noticeable difference. Whether or not it's reported data, we don't have that. But a noticeable difference in terms of safety concerns being eased. And then also the sense of security with the increased DPD presence. And we've done that with a couple of parks like Quality Hill Park in North Cap Hill to support that, Benedict Fountain Park as well. So my hope is that those are small but yet meaningful ways in which we can partner with DPD to triage and monitor those areas that need monitoring. Now, with respect to the data around those who are unhoused and whether or not they are the committers of crime, that's a question best reserved for DPD, and I would defer to them to answer that in the context of this neighborhood. But also, we do the same in Greater Capitol Hill and Rhino and Golden Triangle. But the spikes in property crime are pretty prevalent throughout all corners of the city. But I don't think we should draw any firm conclusions as it relates to who those perpetrators are until we get that information from DPD to the degree that we can.
Thanks, Travis.
You're welcome.
Getting near the bottom of the hour, and I want to be respectful of Travis's time. Are there other questions or comments for Travis at this point?
I think mine are just kind of getting detailed at this point, but kind of building on what Jack was just saying about like, what did the data say about who's committing crimes in regions, that sort of thing. With your point number 6, gathering data on individuals affected by homelessness. So I place a great value on gathering data, but I think that defining what you mean by that is also important. And I know that it's hard to do something really in depth in a very brief bulleted list of 10 things, but like, what do you mean by gathering data on people affected by homelessness? I think that like being more specific or being able to reference the type of parameters by which you want to characterize what's happening is something that I don't know, that would be helpful.
Mhm.
But then also sort of just back to points number 3 and 4, would we as a board be, is the goal to have safe outdoor spaces in all corners of the city? Like, would we be asked to provide like a list of local public spaces in this community? And if it doesn't appear that there's a good fit, like what does it mean for us as a board to sign on to something and say, yes, this is a good idea, but not in our backyard? Like I would want to not have language that sounds good, but then when it comes to implementation, we have a tricky time implementing it here. So I think just more knowledge about what parameters you put around locations, so that if we get questions from the community about what exactly it is that we're signing on to and what the community process and vetting would be going forward, would be important for us before I would feel comfortable.
And I just want to interject because I see Liz has her hand up and she might have a timely comment to add. Excuse me, Travis.
Well, no, actually, I just had a kind of clarifying question for Travis based on what he said on point 6. With that point, are you referring to the HMIS system where the city and service providers collect data on people experiencing homelessness? Or are you talking specifically about like the information systems and process that the city uses or doesn't use around that?
We're talking about both. So it is our understanding that yes, there is some master data tracking as it relates, say for example, the point in time survey that's conducted every year, which is about to be conducted in a couple of weeks, to what happened if Sally is in an unsanctioned encampment at 23rd and Central Park Boulevard, and then the city has a conversation with Sally, and they determine that some mental health services are appropriate, that a housing voucher is going to be her pathway forward, and also she needs employment services. There is a gap in terms of, and then let's just say Sally returns to 35th and Central Park Boulevard, and is once again at a central or unsanctioned encampment. It is between the point of that contact and then the return where we need more information around who the city's engaging, what kind of conversations are they having, and then how many people are return to the need for services, and how many people are placed in more stable housing or a shelter, or are provided mental health care services, or all of the above. And that's what we're trying to get a better sense of. And we've been having conversations with an organization called Community Solutions, and they do some of this data management in other cities. And we've called on the city to be more collaborative with Community Solutions, because if you go on their website, you'll see some of the other municipalities with whom they've worked. And, again, it's interesting to see those organizations and those municipalities work with new models of data management and support. And then those are not the same cities that are on the front pages in the news with respect to an unhoused crisis. And that's what some people are calling this right now in the city and county of Denver. And so we're open to all sorts of ideas as it relates to data management. I'm glad you all have brought that up, because that's exactly why we need more supports to help us think through these action items and make them better.
Yeah, I kind of my day job work on, as you know, on some of this stuff.
Yeah.
And I will just say that there is an information system that's supposed to be a master information system, but it's not used even by people. Like, not every shelter is required to use that information system. The street enforcement team that interacts with people experiencing homelessness that was set up does not use that. That DPD does not use that system for the homeless outreach teams. Don't use that system for specific reasons. But also, it is like there is an inconsistency in the way that service providers, direct service providers, and city agencies track this kind of information, and it really is a gap in just even understanding the scope of the issue. So I'm more interested in learning more about the community solutions, but it is something that I see very clearly, and I don't want to take up any more time since we're past time.
And I could talk for hours about this, but I appreciate you saying that, because that's precisely why we've been calling for this, because we see those gaps in that data gathering and information sharing, and that has got to be refined, because we lose track of people who need the supports that we are able to provide. We don't know their journey through this system. It's complex, and and again, that goes back to sort of our item number one, which is a single point of contact. I mean, is this sort of a czar level position, or a cabinet post, or an appointment from the mayor, where your job every day you go into the office is to tackle and address the growing unhoused issue in the city and county of Denver? And then what are we going to do about it? And also have logistics management. And that is where we're pretty emphatic in terms of our goals and objectives. This is part management issue. This is part data issue, and this is also a need for outside the box creative thinking. And we're not so sure that all of those key pieces and elements are in place to position the city for success over the next couple of years, much less the 12 to 18 months.
Like Travis said, we could talk about this for hours. I hate to be at all hasty in wrapping this up. There's a couple of thoughts that I'd like to share at the end, Travis, but is there anything you want to make sure that you convey before we wrap things up?
Well, I think this conversation is going to help us be better and more effective on our advocacy work. It's great to hear these points of feedback from this group and this board. My sort of call to action is we'd love for you to adopt this and sign on as a partner to help us make it better where it needs to be improved, but then also help us champion it because what I hope to not see, just in the context of RNOs and leadership and efficacy in the city, is you can see how much this has evolved in the last 12 to 18 months. And I would hope that CPUN wants to be a part of the conversation and not on the periphery of the conversation. And so I hope that you'll join us. And I want to say thank you for inviting me to this conversation. And I look forward to coming back to another meeting.
Yeah, well, I want to say thank you for joining us. And I want to say thank you for the commitment that you've made to working on this issue. There's no more important issue within the city right now. Thank you for that. I was struck by what you said about how in the origins of this, some people come from activist backgrounds, that kind of thing. And I think when you're tackling an issue like this, it takes an ecosystem full of different roles, right? Activists are an important role, RNOs are an important role, the government's an important role, and they all have to work together. And they all push and pull in their own respective ways. The ethos of CPUN has always been, how do we invite people into a process? It's been, how do we create opportunities for engagement for our residents? And so what this board will have, the challenge for this board is to figure out how we can do that in this context, right? How can we do what you just said, which is get into the conversation and not on the periphery of the conversation in a way that's true to this organization, what has been this organization's ethos historically. And so the challenge I suppose I put out to the board is to answer Travis's call and to mine, for lack of a better word, about how we might go about that. Because this is an issue that affects all communities, including ours, but we've just got to do it in a way that makes sense for everybody. Does anyone else have anything they want to add before we wrap up for this evening? Travis, I will follow up with you directly after this this call as well.
So Jeff, is the plan that we'll talk about this via email over the next month and then have a plan for next month, or should we assign this to one of the committees so that they can take it and then bring it back to the board? Just a thought.
Yeah, those are good questions. I think, you know, the natural committee to perhaps spearhead an effort is health and safety. I don't necessarily want to obligate them to that. They have their own agenda of things that they're working on, and I don't know where this might fit in their timeline.
Jeff, this actually fits quite well within the work.
Okay, fantastic. How would your committee feel about helping to organize some thoughts around what participation might look like?
I think Sandra's the only other person from health and safety on with us, so I don't want to speak for everyone. Sandra, since it's just two of us, your thoughts perhaps?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So we'll take that on, Jeff.
Okay. And let me
sorry, I just wanted to also say that we had been discussing this in the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee as well, and we'll continue our discussions in that committee. So if there's points of collaboration between Jackson Sandra's committee and DEI, we can get together on that.
Yeah, Liz, we'd love to have you join us. There are usually about 3 of us that come to those meetings. Stop by.
Happy to. I'll add it to my list of committee meetings.
I can also ask the folks with the education committee if, you know, this is something that we would want to get involved in terms of just getting facts out there, getting information out there, connecting. I really believe the education committee can, you know, help with other committees that we have, the 5 other committees that we have. There's a role to be played. And thank you, Travis, very much.
Yeah, Travis, what I hope you hear is that the CPUN board is interested in making contributions to this, to the issue of unhoused in Denver. Well, thank you, everybody, and I appreciate everyone staying a few minutes late. I look forward to connecting with all of you on all that we're doing as soon as possible. Have a good evening.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Night.